motivation is garbage. Yup. Mel Robbins, one of the most successful motivational speakers in the world, just said, motivation is garbage. You see, you're making the same mistake we all make when we think about motivation. You're waiting to feel motivated first before you take action. And you've been told a lie about motivation. See, you've been made to believe that you got to feel motivated, that feeling, that emotion is going to come before the action. It's actually the opposite. You got to take action and the motivation comes. And that's why the first takeaway is motivation is garbage. Because my definition of motivation is that it's just a feeling and it comes and it goes. Okay? That's the way that you've been using it. And the irony is you need motivation. Motivation is fundamental. You need this desire to move in order to finish a project. You got to have motivation to get out of bed, to move off the couch, to head to that networking meeting. And here's what I want to teach you in today's episode. How to do what you need to do when you don't feel like it. That is a skill. That is what is missing in your life right now. And I know that you felt motivated before. You felt motivated when you're on a team and lots of people are yelling at you. You felt motivated when you need to pay your bills. But the truth is, when you're alone and you got something that you need to do that's hard or that's, I don't know, going to require some effort or that scares you a little bit or it's going to put you out there, guess what's not going to be there? Motivation. You're going to come up with every excuse in the book why you shouldn't make your calls, why you shouldn't go to the gym, why you don't feel like going out of bed. And that's because if you rely on the feeling of motivation first, you're waiting for something that's never going to come. That's why you've spent years thinking about what you need to do instead of just doing what you need to do. Waiting for motivation is a trap because you're never going to feel like doing the things you need to do to create a better life, period. Have you ever noticed that the little things are always the hardest things to push yourself to do? Especially when you're in a rut, especially when you feel down, especially when your problems feel enormous. How hard is it to get to the gym? Honestly, it's like next to impossible some days. Or what about speaking up at work? How many times have you sat silently, you got something to share, but you can't muster up the motivation to raise your hand or speak up? Or ordering something healthy for lunch? How easy is it to just, screw it, I'll have the cheeseburger and the french fries and the ice cream sundae for dessert instead of ordering the salad? Why? Well, because you're waiting to feel ready to make that choice. You're waiting to feel motivated to do what you need to do. This was me for a long time. Heck, I was in so much trouble several years ago. I didn't have the motivation to get out of bed and face my problems. And one of the mistakes that I was making during this period in my life is I was waiting around to feel ready to take the steps that I needed to take in order to address the stuff that was going wrong in my life. I guarantee you, you know exactly what you need to do right now in order to be healthier. You do. If you don't, you can Google it, and then you'll have a bunch of things that you could do. Knowing what you need to do just makes you smarter. The $100 million skill that I want to teach you is how you make yourself get out of bed, how you make yourself apply for that job, how you make yourself face the issues you're avoiding. That's how you change your life. And for a long time, when my life was going off the rails, I was waiting, hoping, praying, wishing, wanting to wake up one morning and just suddenly feel motivated to change everything. And that's where this story begins. I got to take you back to a moment in time in my life where my problems were so big that I nearly lost everything that I cared about. And if I had sat around and waited for motivation to strike, I would be divorced. I would be bankrupt. I would have torn my family apart. I would probably be an alcoholic. I would definitely not be hosting this podcast. But thank God, I discovered something extraordinary that's going to change your life. And so let me tell you the story. I got to take you all the way back to 2007, and this is what was going on. So at the time, I was 40 years old, and my husband and I had 3 kids under the age of 10. And my husband and his best friend had gone into the restaurant business. It had always been a dream of theirs. And the first restaurant was a small little pizza joint, 40 seats. It was an absolute home run. So proud of my husband and our best friend. And so in success, they decided to expand. And like complete idiots, we cashed out our entire life savings. We took out a home equity line because that's basically free money, right? You know, we cashed out a bunch of credit cards because what could possibly go wrong in the restaurant business? Well, basically everything did. Location number 2 was the wrong location. Location number 3 was way too expensive. And then all of a sudden, 2008 hit. And here in the United States, that was the year that massive housing market collapse happened. And we found ourselves $800,000 in debt. Chris and his best friend were not able to make payroll. I then lost my job. And everything started to spiral. And here's the thing. Never in a million years did I think that at the age of 41, I would be on the verge of losing my house. I would be unemployed. I would be embarrassed and ashamed and just spiraling. That was not on my vision board. And what happens when your life goes off the rails or you suddenly experience some kind of unexpected setback, whether it's a death or you get fired or some tragedy hits your life, you know what's not there? Motivation. I'll tell you what's there. Fear, shame, procrastination, depression, anxiety. I had all of that and more. You want to know how I faced this moment in my life? Like a champ. I basically drank myself into the ground and screamed at my husband every time I saw him because clearly he tried to do this on purpose. And funny, that sort of coping skill, it actually didn't help the situation. It made it a lot worse. And here's the other interesting fact about this moment in time. Even though I literally felt like I had been pushed off a cliff without a parachute, I knew what I could do. I knew that it would help if I looked for a job. I knew that I could call my parents and tell them what was going on. I knew I should reach out to friends. I knew that I should still exercise. I knew that I shouldn't drink so much. I knew that my husband was trying everything he could to solve the financial situation and to fix the business. And yet, I didn't do any of those things. Why? Because I didn't feel motivated to do those things. I felt depressed. I felt anxious. I felt angry. I felt scared. And those feelings are what kept me trapped. I didn't know what I'm about to teach you. I didn't know that I could take action before I felt ready. I didn't know how to push myself. I just knew that I was going to be fucked if I didn't figure this out. And so, one night, everything changed. And you're going to often hear me say on this podcast, you're one decision away from a different life. Do not wait around for the motivation to make that decision. One decision away. So I'm sitting there on a Monday night in 2008 outside of Boston, Massachusetts. And I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where your life is so bad that you're giving yourself a pep talk. I mean, that is kind of a pathetic moment. It's one thing if a friend gives you a pep talk, but if you got to give it to yourself. And so I'm sitting there watching TV, and we're about a week away from our first bankruptcy proceeding. Chris has not been paid in 6 months. My checks are bouncing left and right. We have pulled our daughter out of town soccer because we cannot afford the $125 fee. I am hiding from friends. We have not paid the mortgage in months. It's just a disaster. And I'm watching TV and I'm giving myself this pep talk. And I'm like, all right, that's it, Mel. That's it. Tomorrow morning, woman, it's the new you. Tomorrow morning, you gotta look for a job. You gotta stop drinking so much. You gotta call your parents and ask for some money. You have got to stop screaming at Chris. And by God, woman, when that alarm clock goes off, you cannot hit that snooze button 5 times. You cannot lay there like a human pot roast marinating in fear. You, woman, have got to get out of bed and you have got to get those kids on that bus. And all of a sudden, across the television screen, I saw a rocket launch at the end of a commercial.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And it gave me this crazy idea. I thought, oh my God, that's it. That's the answer. That's the answer to getting up. Tomorrow morning, when that alarm clock rings, Mel, you are going to launch yourself out of bed like a rocket ship. You are going to move so fast that you won't be in that bed when that anxiety and that depression pins you there like a gravity blanket. You are going to launch like a rocket. Now, it could have been the 4 bourbon Manhattans I had that gave me that idea because I was drinking an awful lot back then. But for whatever reason, I'll never forget it. It was a Tuesday in Massachusetts. And that's the very first time I saw it. And when I first explain this to you, I really want to pause for a second. Because the truth is, I didn't know how to do this. I didn't know how to push myself. I was the human example that was the opposite of motivation. I don't even know what that word is. All I knew is that nobody was coming, that nobody was going to ride in on their white horse and fix this situation, that nobody was going to pay my bills. Nobody was going to fix the restaurants. Nobody was going to force me to look for a job. That as much as I wanted and wished that somebody would fix my life, that it was my responsibility to do it. And that I had to figure out how to push myself. And that's the second takeaway from this episode. No one's coming. No one's coming to do the work for you. All those things that you want in your life, all the dreams that you have, they are your responsibility. And the only thing that has been missing is this hack that I'm about to teach you. You have made the same mistake that I made, which is waiting and hoping I would wake up one morning and feel courageous and motivated enough to do the things I needed to do. And so when you embrace the idea that motivation's garbage and no one is coming and it's your responsibility and you are capable of doing this, that's going to change your life. So let's go back to the question that I get from everybody, which is, I get it, Mel, I get it, but how? How do you push yourself when you don't feel like it? That's the $1 million question. So let's go back. Let's go back to the story in 2008, because that Tuesday morning in February outside of Boston, Massachusetts, that's where I learned the secret to hacking motivation. This is going to change everything. So that morning, the alarm went off. And I'm going to unpack this very slowly because I really want you to pay attention. Because this is the secret to everything. And this simple rule and tool that you're about to learn also embodies decades of neurological and psychological research, which I will also unpack for you. And so the alarm goes off, and all of a sudden I noticed this window of time. It's a moment where you hesitate and you think about what you need to do instead of doing what you need to do. It's unmistakable when you see this moment of hesitation. It's a habit. We all have it. The alarm goes off, and I immediately remember the rocket launch. And I remember that declaration that I had made the night before. I'm going to launch myself out of bed like NASA launches a rocket. And instead of doing it, I started thinking about doing it. And as soon as you start thinking about doing something, You open this window of time. I call it this 5-second moment of hesitation. And inside of that moment where you start to think, and that morning in 2008, I started thinking, ugh, I don't want to launch myself out of bed. It's cold. It's dark. I don't feel like it. This bed is so warm. How the hell is this going to help anything anyway? I don't want to. And inside all of that thinking is where the anxiety and the excuses and the depression and the overwhelm, where it all starts to spin. And I could feel my hand reaching for the snooze button because it had become a habit to wake up and think about getting out of bed and instead hit the snooze button and delay what I needed to do, numb all the thoughts. And as I'm reaching for the snooze button, I don't know what came over me. But that morning, for whatever reason, I just started counting backwards. The same way that NASA does. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then I moved and stood up and I'm like, whoa, that's weird. And I went on with my day. And then the next morning, the alarm went off and I remembered the rocket launch. And immediately I started thinking about doing it instead of doing it. And again, the excuses roll in and I again feel myself reaching for the snooze button. And I count backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I stand up. Weird. The third morning is when it really kicked in for me because I heard the alarm go off. I remembered the rocket launch thing. I started thinking about it. I don't want to. It's dark. Who cares? I count backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I stand up. Now, I want to stop here for a second and explain a little bit of the research. So, researchers, psychologists, neuroscientists explain this 5-second window this way. There are two types of people. There are people that have a bias toward thinking, which is the habit of hesitating and thinking about what you need to do instead of doing what you need to do. And then there are people that have a bias toward action, which is having the habit of being able to push yourself to take action regardless of how you feel. This 5-second countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, helps you move from being a person that has a bias toward thinking and become a person that has a bias toward action. And this countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, is the secret to hacking motivation. It's the secret to pushing yourself to take action regardless of how you feel. It is the secret to everything. So that third morning, I sort of, said to myself, okay, so, because, I'm cynical. You're going to get to know me. I'm a lawyer by education, and I'm somebody that's like really analytical. And so I tend to also be really cynical. And so, I'm standing there in my bedroom and I'm like, okay, great. You just created something irritating, Mel, that helps you get out of bed. How the hell is this going to help? And I'm like, whoa. You're about to lose everything you care about. Your marriage is on the rocks. Your family will be torn apart. You're going to lose this house, woman. Why not just try this thing? Why not for one day, any moment today, where you know exactly what you should or could do, but you don't feel like it? Just count backwards. I mean, what the hell? It's not like it's going to make it worse. What if it made it better? So I walk out into the kitchen, and my husband, Chris, is standing in front of the fridge. And you know how that thing happens where you see somebody you love and you just want to kill them? You know how that happens? Well, so poor Chris is standing there, minding his own business, probably trying to get out of the house fast before, his bitchy wife wakes up and starts screaming at him. And I see him, and I'm like, but here's the thing. I didn't want to kill the guy. I loved him. I just was so on edge and stressed out, and it's so much easier to be angry and frustrated than it is to be afraid. But in that moment, I counted silently to myself, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and something strange happened. Like I could feel the pressure and agitation in my body release. And I was able to take a breath and speak to the man from a place of my values instead of screaming at him, which I had been doing for 6 months. I see my sneakers. I know I need to exercise, but who the hell wants to exercise in February outside of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? I'm out the door. I see the phone. I don't know about you, but I hate people. I hate networking. I hate 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm picking up the phone, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm picking it up again, and I'm calling friends, and I'm telling people the truth. I need a job. I got laid off. Chris and I are in financial trouble. Like, I need help here. I pick up the phone again. I call my parents. And slowly but surely, I am taking the actions that change your life. And look, it doesn't work overnight. It works over time. And that's important because true change builds over time. Quick fixes don't stick. If you want to change anything, you got to be in it and you got to repeat it. And that's one of the other things that I love about this countdown technique that I started calling the 5-second rule. You have 5 seconds to move. You have 5 seconds to push yourself to take action. And if you don't move in that 5-second window, your brain will contaminate your motivation to act. Using this countdown technique, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, in moments where you feel yourself hesitate, or you feel the fear coming on, or you feel yourself talking yourself out of it, or you feel the self-doubt or the fear kicking in. When you start counting backwards, the decision to count backwards means you're making a decision to move. You're making a decision to move before you feel like it. You're making a decision to summon your courage, your confidence, your desire for something more than the place you're in right now. The counting backwards also works because counting requires focus. Now, I didn't know why it worked then, okay? And my husband started using it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Took it into business. They start talking to landlords and renegotiating leases. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And they're facing the issues in their business head on and talking to investors about what's going on. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They're restructuring the P&L and they're having to lay off people that they love. Hardest thing in the world to do as a business owner. And so step by step, decision by decision, using this 5-second rule and the countdown technique, my husband and I were able to make the decisions and take the actions that aligned with where we wanted our lives to go instead of waiting around to feel ready to do it. We were able to push ourselves 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to take action, to get where we wanted to go instead of sitting where we were hoping motivation would show up. That's why this thing works. And, here's the truth. I never intended to tell anybody about this thing because, first of all, it sounds kind of stupid. Okay, wait a minute, Mel. You're telling me if I just count backwards, my life is going to change? That sounds kind of dumb. The other reason why I didn't tell anybody about this little 5-second rule thing is because I had no idea why it worked. I just knew it worked. I didn't know if I had tapped into some ancestral witchery and this was some magic spell. I didn't know if God was just giving me this little gift. I just figured this was this secret thing that came out of the sky in a moment of desperation, and Chris and I would use this and it would be our little thing. Well, that all changed in 2010. So, a couple years goes by. We've been using the 5-second rule to get out of bed, to exercise, to get our marriage back on track, to get the drinking under control. I get a job as a local radio host for $25 an hour in order to, pay bills. And we're just moving and shaking and all this stuff is happening, okay? And so what ends up happening is in 2010, I get a call from a college friend saying, hey, I got somebody that's putting together a conference in San Francisco, and they need somebody to talk about job change. And Mel, you have changed your job more than an ABBA cover band changes costumes in a set. Would you be willing to go give a talk in San Francisco about changing your career? And then she said the magic words. They're going to give you 2 free plane tickets and 2 nights at the St. Regis. And I thought, oh my God, Chris and I haven't had a vacation in 4 years. We have liens on our house. Hell yes, I will give a speech on a stage in San Francisco. Now, here's what you need to know. I had never given a speech on a stage in my life. I just wanted a freaking free vacation. So we head out to San Francisco, and this conference happened to be the first ever TEDx conference that was put on. And at the time, TEDx was not like the thing that it is now. None of the talks were online. This was the first spinoff. And so there was like almost no training. And if you've ever seen my TEDx talk, you are witnessing a 21-minute long panic attack. Literally, look closely at about minute 1, and you will notice that I have that neck rash that people get when they get really anxious or when they drink too much. And by minute 19, I was so spun around and anxious, I was basically floating in the air. I completely forgot how I was supposed to end that speech. And I look out into that auditorium and I go, oh, I know. I do this thing. I call it the 5-second rule. The moment you have an instinct to act, you got to move within 5 seconds or else your brain will kill it. And then I said, thank you. And I was so out of my mind, I gave out my email address. I left the stage. Chris was back there staring at the floor. I'm like, that was horrible. He's like, it wasn't that bad. And I'm like, I am never giving a speech again. And then something crazy happened. A year later, TEDx put that talk online. So now we're talking 2012. Another year passes. I don't even know it's online. I'm busy now, working full time. I've got healthcare benefits. We still have liens on the house, by the way, but we're making the ends work. Chris has left the restaurant business. He's getting sober. He's becoming a yoga instructor. He's healing himself. He's doing all kinds of stuff. And I'm just like doing whatever I can to pay our bills. And all of a sudden I start getting all these like emails from people. And by people, I mean strangers. And it was people around the world writing to me because I had given out my freaking email address. And they were telling me, Mel, holy cow, I saw that thing in San Francisco and I've been using the 5-second rule for 18 months and my business is on pace to double and I'm present with my kids. My gosh, Mel, I've been using this 5-second thing to reach out to executives and they're responding back. Hey, Mel, I saw that 5-second rule talk you gave and I have taught it to my team. We've been more productive in the last 48 hours than we have been all year. Well, why? Well, you're not selling anything if you're thinking about selling something. The 5-second rule cuts through that bias we have toward thinking about what we need to do, and it pushes you to do what you need to do, which is why people around the world use it now to be more productive, to sell more, to grow businesses, to lose weight. Like the ways that you can use this are just absolutely endless. Should you teach this to your kids?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and read.
You might want to be careful with that because they will use this with you, you know. My kids use it with me all the time. It's totally annoying. One of the things that has been just absolutely amazing is that we hear from medical professionals and from people around the world every single day who explain that the 5-second rule is so effective at helping them stay sober. I mean, just listen to my friend Kyle.
Not only has 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 helped me overcome an addiction to the snooze button, but it's also helped me to stay sober and away from substances. Even in finding out that my grandma's cancer was back this weekend, where normally that would send me into a spiral to make some choices that were not in my best interest. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm able to stay strong for my family, to keep my career going, and continue the good progress I've made after 3.5 years of sober.
Way to go, Kyle. Here's the thing. When strangers start to write to you about how they're using something you put out into the world to change their lives, I felt this obligation to not only share the 5-second rule and share other people's stories, but I felt an obligation to understand exactly why this thing worked. And so for the past 7 years, I have been engaged in a extensive research project about the 5-second rule. I've talked to the world's leading neurologists and psychologists and experts in habits. And what I've come to understand is this. The 5-second rule and the act of counting backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, is called metacognition. That is a simple word that means brain hack or cheat code. That means we can use a metacognition technique like the 5-second rule, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, as a way to switch gears intentionally and cut off the part of the brain where you are sabotaging yourself and tap into the part of the brain where you can take control. In habit research, the 5-second rule is classified as what they call a starting ritual. A starting ritual is a positive trigger that triggers positive habits, positive new behavior. A starting ritual is something that interrupts an old pattern. And when you start counting backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you're interrupting the old pattern, whether that old pattern is a habit of worrying or a habit of having self-critical thoughts, or whether it is a pattern of reaching for a glass of wine as you're cooking dinner. The second you feel the thought engage, or you feel yourself reaching for the snooze button or reaching for that wine, start counting backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you interrupt the old pattern or habit. When you get to 1, now your prefrontal cortex is engaged, and you move and replace the old pattern with the new, healthier, positive pattern. You replace the negative thought with a positive thought. You replace the glass of wine with a mocktail. You replace the snooze button by throwing your sheets off and standing up. That's why this thing works. And one of the reasons why, because I think I said, very clearly, I never intended to share this with anybody. This went viral on its own. And the reason why I believe it went viral on its own is because it was meant to. And I was the person, for whatever reason, that the universe selected to be out there sharing it. And the other reason why it has gone crazy viral and it's used in clinical settings is because, like so many of the tools that I'm going to share with you on this podcast, it encapsulates, I don't even know if I said that word right, but whatever, you know what I mean, decades of psychological and neurological research. This is a tool that you can teach to anybody, you can use in any moment. It always works because it's based in science. How freaking cool is that? Can you just explain to everybody a little bit about the past 4 years at USC and the 3 pillars of this creative process that you just learned?
Okay, so I was a popular music vocalist at the Thornton School of Music, but the process that I'm about to explain to you is the underpinnings of the Thornton School of Music program and the basis of our entire curriculum. So I will give credit to Chris Sampson, the founder of the program. Love you. And he's the one that shined some light on this process for me and gave it a name and gave it context in my project. So thank you. In order to tell you how, I used a process/method that is the underpinnings of my entire program. It's what we do at Thornton for 4 years. And then we learn how to do it ourselves before we graduate so we can create whatever we want. And the process is 3 steps: emulation, assimilation, and innovation. That's
okay, hold on a
it.
second. So 3 steps are
Emulation, which means to imitate, to match or surpass some kind of achievement that you want. So that means pick something that you're inspired by, pick somewhere you want to go, pick somebody who has more money than you that you want, pick somebody that has a house you want, anything, a North Star, pick a North Star and break it down. What does that thing have that you don't? Line it all out. So for me, I picked Sarah Bareilles and Brandy, who are 2 of my favorite artists, and I broke them down. They're both strong, powerful, fierce. They both can songwrite, they can sing, they can play instruments, they can arrange, they can produce. They're advocates, they are powerful in their career, they collaborate, those kinds of things. Once I broke them down, then it was time for me to assimilate, which is step 2. And assimilate is the 10,000 hour rule. Step 1, you find a North Star or it will find you.
Yes.
Now you're in emulation phase, and here are the 3 pillars.
You can't start emulation phase until you have a North Star?
I don't think so.
Wow.
You got to have somewhere to go.
Can you start the emulation process by simply saying, I just don't want to be where I am?
Yes, but I think it gives you an anchor when you have somewhere to go. And I think that
it could just be the opposite of where you are. I mean, if you're, if you're somebody who's, you know what I'm saying? Amy, what are you thinking?
I think the emulation phase is so brilliant because picking the North Star is something I think a lot of people don't even realize they can do. You know, like they just feel like this is me. This is who I'm always going to be. I can't change who I am. I'm not really sure about learning new skills. They don't even think about, you know, doing the research, looking at other people. And I just think that alone is brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
That alone gives you a life jacket. You know, that alone gives you that step up to closer to the person who you want to become. Just knowing like your number one, you can just look at them and figure out how they did it. Okay, brilliant. Like, duh.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Or I mean, say that you're the person you want to be more like, your North Star, whatever you want to call it, is Bill Gates. You might not want to be exactly like him in all walks of life, but there might be one thing he does that you want to emulate. Like, it doesn't have to be their entire persona. For me, for my specific project, it was because I'm obsessed with and in love with their artistry, which is what I want to emulate. But for you, it can be one tiny sliver of somebody's character.
I have somebody like that. Do you have somebody like that, Amy?
I have a tiny sliver example, but I want to hear your example.
No, I want to hear yours first.
Well,
You look like you don't want to say
this
it out
is-
loud.
Now I'm like, why did I say this? Because I have to reveal my dirty secret, which is I used to watch the Housewives series on Bravo like all the time.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That was, yeah.
Does our producer Andrea know?
Yes, she knows.
Because she used to be Andy Cohen's
yes,
EP.
Yes.
Okay.
She and I have a lot of deep conversations about that. But anyway, a very simple example. I remember there was one woman on the show that was, of course, always controversial and fucking things up, but also really super fun and kind. And I noticed she would say like a couple of words that I would never say to people. And it's not what you think. She would call people love, like say, "Hey, love, how are you today? How are you doing?" And I just thought that was just the kindest, most beautiful thing to say to somebody. "Oh, thanks, love. I appreciate that," you know? And so that was like that sliver where she was, you know, this is a super tiny sliver, but she was my North Star. And I like got up the courage to start talking like her and start being really open and being kinder to people. And now that's a part of my vernacular. You know, I say that all the time, like, "Hey, love, how's it going?"
You do.
But that was not me in the beginning. That was not who I was. And I'm really glad that I did that without knowing the entire process. But yeah, that's what I did. And I feel good about that.
Do you have one for that
Like a
you
bigger
want to?
one?
Yeah, that you want to commence now.
A thing that I want to start doing now,
Yeah.
probably get to the point a little faster.
No.
A thing that
if
I
you
want
were graduating and you were going to commence,
yes,
what is it?
it would be from the school of rock hard bodies and incredible muscular abs. That's the school I would want to graduate from. Yeah, I want to do like a little bit of a body makeover. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah. Right? So who would I emulate?
Who's your dream body? North Star.
Yeah. I'd have to check my Instagram and get their real names.
Well, let's say it's
yeah.
Gwyneth Paltrow
Okay.
or Jennifer Aniston.
More of realistic for me. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, well, I wasn't sure if we were going.
Thanks,
maybe,
love.
I wasn't sure if we were maybe going.
Yeah.
Maybe
No, I like
younger,
that.
same
Yeah.
age, little
No,
older.
it was risky waters that you
Okay.
jumped
You know what?
into and you did it.
You
so
know what?
that was
Jennifer Aniston is my dream body.
nice. Okay.
So
All right.
Now we're on the same page.
Now you know what I'm talking about.
Her and Just Go With It, the Hawaii
Yeah.
scene.
There you go. You want to be like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I need to look that up now.
Yeah,
I
you're
don't. I
gonna-
don't ever recall
it's-
seeing her in a bathing suit.
We'll stitch that in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So
Anyway, let's
Yes.
say that she is your dream body as she
Yes.
is mine. So you break her down.
yes,
What
she
does
does
she do?
a lot of yoga.
Okay, a lot of yoga. And like every single thing she does,
Yeah.
you don't have to do every single little thing, but learn a lot about what she does and
Yeah.
start to assimilate it, which
That's
is step 2.
Yes.
Too. Okay.
Start to weave it into your own makeup, into your own being, into your own everyday life.
Yeah.
Do yoga more, eat more greens, whatever she's doing.
Right.
Then at the end, innovate you're going to have to put your own Amy twist on it, because what you
into
need
it.
to do to get your dream body is not going to be exactly what she's going to do.
And it won't look exactly like hers.
No, but
But
being able to break her down and adding some of her qualities into your everyday will help you get to your own version of that dream body.
Yeah.
That makes a ton of sense. Let's hear a word from our sponsors real quick. And when we come back, Ken, I got another question for you because I'm really curious about this North Star moment. Once you determine that Brandy Norwood and Sarah Bareilles were your North Stars, I want you to see if you can break down the exact steps that you took next, because I think it'll help all of us apply this to our lives. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm Mel Robbins. I am so thrilled that you're here with us. I'm sitting here with two people I love. Our daughter, Kendall Robbins, who just graduated from University of Southern California, and one of my closest friends, Amy, who also works for 143 Studios. And we've been talking about identifying a North Star, which is a person that you really admire or want to emulate in your own life. And our daughter, Kendall, had just explained that she had identified that Brandy Norwood and Sarah Bareilles were her North Stars when she decided she wanted to be a singer-songwriter. So Ken, once you had those two identified, what the heck do you do next? Like, what's the step-by-step process?
Now it was time for me to learn how to be a producer, how to be an arranger, how to be an advocate, how to collaborate, all of those kinds of things that I didn't already have. And that will be the biggest chunk of your journey and will take a long time. For me, it took up to 4 years. It's a lifelong journey, so it will take for the rest of my life, for the rest of the time that I'm on this earth. And then once I was done assimilating those qualities that, for example, Brandy Norwood and Sarah Bareilles have in their artistry and in their humanity, it was time for me to create something of my own. And so once I had all the skills that I had to be a producer, and the skills to be an arranger, and the skills to be an advocate, and the skills to be a collaborator and a songwriter and a singer, etc., I then went and created my own music. And inherently, it will have my own twist on it, and it will have my own flavors of Kendall Robbins on it that Brandy Norwood and Sarah Bareilles will never have. But that's just the beauty of creating something of your own, is that it will always be a reflection of you because you're the art. And I think this process of, I'm going to line it out for you one more time, emulation, number 1, assimilation, number 2, innovation, number 3, is a process you can all use to get wherever you want in life, whether you're an interior designer or you're a banker or you're a mom or you're a sister or you are an artist like me. You can use this process in your life to close the gap between where you're at currently and where you want to go.
I think this is fascinating. And I can see how I can do this in my life, which is why I'm glad we're talking about this, especially with the example that you gave, Amy. But for the sake of everyone listening, can you make this even more granular, Ken? Especially that first part, because I know that's where we're all going to get tripped up. How do you get started once you have the North Star, that kind of person or that thing that you want to emulate? That phase where you start imitating, how do you get moving on that?
Well, I can explain my program and how it's structured that way.
Yeah, in
and
the
how it
3
makes
pillars.
sense.
Will you do that?
So first and second year of USC, in my program, it's popular music performance, and there are popular music performance vocalists, popular music performance songwriters, bass players, drummers, guitar players, piano players, etc., instrumentalists, and singers. And our professors put you into bands. 1 drummer, 3 singers, 1 bass player, you get the deal. And they assign you different songs per week. And the repertoire begins in the 50s all the way through early 2000s into present day pop songs that we cover in class. And so on the first week of class, you get songs from the 50s and the 60s, and they assign these songs to you, and you learn them, and you learn how to emulate them, how to imitate them, which is step 1.
Can I just stop right there? I thought this was really interesting because this was not like the popular music shows that you see where you're supposed to sing somebody's song but do it in your own way sort of thing. This was very specific emulating. Step 1, meaning they had you singing these songs from the 50s that a lot of you are like, are you freaking kidding me? This song is so stupid. And you were graded on, if you're a drummer, can you imitate that drum technique and pattern of that exact artist. Like they're making
down to the 16th note, down to the millisecond of the song. How accurately can you imitate it? How accurately can you replicate what the original instrumentalist or artist or group of artists did together? You're graded based on how accurately you can emulate it. So for me, it was the intonation, the phrasing, the riffs, the runs, the notes. So for the first 2 years of my program, that's all we did. Every single song we were assigned, that was the objective. It wasn't to sound like Kendall. It wasn't to be the best I could be and do all my runs and do all my riffs and belt as much as I could. It was to sound exactly like the artist. And the point of that is so you can start to understand the building blocks of popular music. But I mean, for any of you listeners, it could be to just understand where you want to go.
You talked about closing that gap, Kendall. When you see the gap, it is so overwhelming because you feel so far away. Like, how did you feel when you were in high school as a graduate, or even right now? How far away as a high school graduate did you feel from somebody like a Sarah Bareilles or a Brandy Norwood?
So far, the furthest. And I still feel very, very far from that. I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
But is there a difference in how you view the gap?
I'm already there.
What do you mean?
I feel like I already have all of the skills that I need to have to be a professional recording touring artist. I'm just getting closer and closer to her and building and building and building. But like, I think I already have the skills and the tools and the knowledge. It's just figuring out how to apply them and figuring out how to apply them in a way that gets me to where I want to go.
I agree with you.
I don't think that we should call it a gap. Gap implies that it's a loss, and it's not.
Yes.
The most beautiful thing in life is that space, because you're going to grow and you're going to learn and you're going to fail and you're going to screw up and you're going to meet people you love and meet people you hate and meet friends you don't want. But thinking about it as a gap is, you're never going to get there if you think about it as a gap. It's the road you get to travel. It's about the journey, not about like,
yes.
Don't think about it as the gap. That's step one.
Yes. But step two is, I want you to think about it as like gaining something.
It's like a lily pad effect. Every lily pad you light up is yours now to keep.
Yes. And so and the second thing though, that people feel when they look at that moment of commencement and they look out into the future and they see all the things I got to gain along the way and all this, it doesn't feel like an opportunity. And also people have no idea how to start. And so one of the things that I found to be really interesting about your presentation is that you took Sarah Bareilles and Brandy Norwood, and they were your North Star. But then you divided them into 3 categories of character, skill, and what was the other one? Career. And by dividing it into 3 categories, you now made it concrete. What are the skills that I need to gain? What is the character attributes I need to gain? What are the aspects of their career in terms of their experience that I need to gain?
Well, let me just correct you. Not need, want.
Great. That
Want
I want
to gain.
Okay, so why is it important to say want versus need?
Because need implies that if you don't have it, you're at a loss. You don't need it. You just want it, and that's beautiful.
Well, I think want, it's more motivating.
Yeah, that too.
That's right, because I slipped into the language of gap and loss. Oh my God, I need that thing or else I'm not going to get there. If you talk about it in the abundant language of gaining something, all of those things are opportunities to gain something that help you walk closer to the future you. And so I'm curious though, because not everybody wants to be a recording artist. Some people listening are like, I just want to date somebody, or I really want to be healthy. Or for me, I see this applying very much, these 3 pillars and these 3 steps to how do I get my personal financial life in order? I've been living in this mode, I think, of scarcity and fear ever since your dad and I were nearly bankrupt well over 15 years ago. And I want to graduate from that. I want to commence a whole new way of operating. And there's a lot of skills and habits and support that I need to gain on the road ahead. And I just would love to hear you talk about, okay, you identified Brandy and Sarah, but what would you recommend, or what was the next step in trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I break apart who this person is to help me start to think about what I need to gain, or what I want to gain? Got to catch myself there.
For me, it didn't require very much research because I feel as though I have an intimate relationship with these two artists, although they don't know that I exist.
Why do you feel like you have an intimate relationship?
I've been listening to their music for all of time, and I've spent thousands of hours on YouTube watching their interviews and reading articles about them and reading their books and just consuming everything they put out into the world. And so I think for all of you people that maybe want to get into a relationship or start eating healthier, making more money, or so on and so forth, you might not necessarily have as crystal clear of a North Star like I did, because I think my career warrants a lot more North Stars. But for example, for you, you want to graduate from your scarcity mindset in your finances. You might not necessarily have a Brandy or a Sarah, an actual human being that exists on this earth that you want to be exactly more like. So what instead you could do is think about that future version of you. What does the future version of Mel look like, who is financially abundant and has an abundant relationship to it? What are her characteristics? What does her career look like? What are her skill sets? Like, you can imagine yourself in a future, like imagine your future self who's eating healthy. What does she feel like every day? How does she talk to her friends? How does she move through the world? How does she wake up in the morning? Break that down. You can create it from nothing. Or you can look at Women's Health magazine and pick someone from in there and break them down and do the same thing. I mean, there are North Stars everywhere, but if you're feeling lost, I think the first step is finding something or someone, and it can be the future version of you, to inspire yourself. You need to be inspired.
I agree. And for me, with the financial thing, I didn't have a North Star. I just knew I was sick and tired of feeling either out of control or irresponsible or very reactive in that part of my life, and that I wanted to graduate from that and commence something new. And the second that I made that decision, right, that I'm just going to graduate from this, I got to end this, I got to start something new, North Stars start to show up. But what I liked about your particular process is I think those 3 columns are genius. So I want to make sure you listening have these. Declare what you want to graduate from so that something new can commence. If you don't have a North Star, simply saying, I don't want to do it like this anymore. Like, I'm done with college. I'm ready for the rest of my life, even though I don't know what the fuck the rest of my life looks like. For me, it was just like, I'm done feeling like this. I'm done operating like this. I got to figure this out. I want to be proud of myself in this area of my life. And I didn't know what that meant. And so just declaring it started to have all kinds of stuff show up. Like, the first thing that happened is Ramit came onto the podcast suddenly. The guy, I Can Make You Rich. And that got my wheels turning. And the second thing that happened is I spent a weekend with a bunch of women that are friends of mine that have similar businesses who are way more successful than me. And as I sat around listening to them, I'm like, wait, you do what? Wait, depreciate what? Wait, what do you do? You have a, huh? And I started to feel that gap. And then because you had shown me this 3-step thing, I'm like, wait a minute, I got to flip this. I can gain these experiences. I can gain these skills. I can gain this character that I don't have right now. And so the 3 columns that I think could be applied in any situation are the skills, or doing the sit-ups, or doing the abs. But there is something deeper in this step 1 process that your research allowed you to tap into. And, you asked me kind of what's an example of a North Star for me. It's probably a North Star for a lot of people. And that's The Rock. I am so inspired by him. And there's a particular aspect about him that I love, and it's all in the character piece. It's in the fact that it's so clear that he's such a great guy. It is so clear that he is a person that's out there for the everyday person. It's so clear that he's so generous and humble and kind. And I also admire him in that he's got such diverse businesses. It seems like anything he's interested in, he's like, whoop, pivot, energy drink. Whoop, pivot, we're doing shoes. Whoop, pivot, we're launching the XL NFL League. Whoop, pivot, I'm going to do this superhero movie. Whoop, pivot, I'm going to go do this thing. And I love that about him.
You're fired up. I think this is a good example of like North stardom that
I want to commence that.
So yeah, you got the fire in the belly about The Rock.
And so I've never, though, been able to get past North Star. And I can think about the moment when I was like, there's my North Star. It was a singular Instagram post where he had a photo of him at this huge board table. And it was him and the person that runs $7, their production company, the origin of which is that when he moved to LA, he only had $7 in his pocket. And he had this huge team of people. And they were launching the tequila brand, or they had already launched the tequila brand, and they were about to launch the energy drink. And they had their, partnership with Under Armour. And I went, oh my gosh, wait a minute. He's not doing this alone.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait a minute. He got really into, there's a team of people that he builds these things with.
Yeah.
I need a team of people. I started to realize, oh, wait, there are things I need to gain. Will I ever be him? Of course not. But for me, he's this North Star because it seems like he graduates all the time. He graduates from being a professional wrestler, right? And then he graduates from that role to something else. And then he graduates from that role to something else that he commences. He's always beginning something and gaining skills, but never, ever seems to lose contact with that character piece. And you can see it even in the $7. Like the fact that he named his company after this idea of starting with almost nothing. And so I am really inspired by that. And I realize I got to get serious about doing step one of emulating. And that means doing this research and breaking this all down.
I think one of the things I like is also that you talk about how you look at The Rock and you're kind of like, well, how do I get there from here? Like, how do I do that? And this process gives you like, okay, break it down. I feel like there are a lot of different parts of this process where people stop. Number one, they would stop by not knowing that they could get a North Star. Number two, they could stop by being like, well, how do I get to be like The Rock? I mean, the
gap is
right? Huge.
It's an opportunity to gain things.
Definitely, I'm not picking him for my muscles.
I don't need to. Yes.
Goals. Okay, I don't want to pick him for that. But so you could stop there and you could be like, you know what? I'm just never going to be like him. I'm never going to be like him. But then we have this breakdown. What's his character like? What are his skills like? What's his career like? Okay, I could put my hooks into that. Like I could do that homework and get.
These are things that I want.
Like Kendall's saying, yeah, these are things that I want. And you're not going to be him. You're going to get closer. And how good is that going to feel? Mm-hmm. That's going to feel amazing. Like you must have felt great during this process no.
Well,
did you?
No,
did
yeah.
you?
I mean, to be completely frank, I did my entire senior project and talked all about all of these different attributes that I had gained over my time at USC and all of these different skill sets that I had been working on. And it wasn't until a week before my presentation that my mentor, Chris Sampson, shout out again, founder of the USC pop music program, gave me this process as context. He said, okay, yes, you've been doing all of these things. You've been adding all these characteristics and qualities and skill sets and techniques to your artistry and your persona, but there's no project here. You need to describe how you did it. How did you do this? How did you become this producer and this arranger and this kind and this funny and this humor and your perspective? And he gave me the context of this process. So I can promise you that this has been happening for your entire life. This is the way that we live in the world. This is literally the way that we move through the world. It's the way not only that artists create, but that humans create. It's the only way. You see another, you're a finance dude. You see another company do something. Boom, the process happens. You just don't have context for it. The concept of being inspired by something and creativity is just an idea comes to you. An idea, a North Star, whatever you want to call it. It's the same thing.
I love that.
So the first step is emulate, which means to match or surpass a person or achievement, typically by imitation. That's the first step. And in order to do that, to match or surpass an achievement, you've got to break it down. You need to do the research. You need to understand it. What are they doing? You can do what I did, which will include my slide. I broke my 2 North Star artists into their skill sets, their characteristics, their character, and their career. Yours might look different, but those are maybe some guiding lights you can use. And assimilate means to take in information, ideas, or culture and understand them fully.
So how do you do that? So what is that? How is that different than the process of studying this North Star?
So you study your North Star. For example, yours is The Rock. And you say, oh, I love that he has 9 businesses.
Mm-hmm.
You look at his 9 businesses and you pull them apart and you see what they do. That's emulation. You have every little detail of the business. How many people work for them? What are they? What are they registered as? How much money are they making a year? What's their target audience? All that kind of stuff. You haven't started doing that for yourself yet. You've just identified it.
Yeah.
No, I've sat and watched and been in awe.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think
now
I've
it's
been
time
in the
for
gut-
you
Yeah.
to take in that information, that
Yep.
idea, that culture, and understand it fully.
Or you're not going to graduate, Mel.
And not only to understand it fully means to digest it, means to put it in an EpiPen and shove it in your leg. Understand it, consume it, practice it, get in the library, read the book, figure out how to grow your audience to the exact same size that The Rock has his.
If you're watching a movie and about this is the music montage moment of the change.
Yes.
Right? It's like that moment where the girl gets the ice skates time and time again, grabbing the ice skates at 6 a.m, going to the rink. Sweating it out, taking a shower, going to school.
It's the 10,000 hour rule.
Yes.
To master something, it requires 10,000 hours of practicing it. And I did that over 4 years. I took classes. I took lessons with my professors. I studied in my room. I sang 100 million songs.
This is my favorite part.
This is the longest part of the journey, and it's the most beautiful part because so many other things come to you while it's happening, while you're trying to take all of these qualities and characteristics of your North Stars and put them into yourself. You're going to find new things out about yourself that are part of your journey that you'd never known.
Yes. I love that. I love that you said it's the most beautiful part because I think that's the part I'm most in love with too. And I think there's a romantic aspect to it of you taking on a different way of being in your own life, you know, and that you're purposely doing it to feed your own happiness, to explore a skill and deepen it. Like, I just think there's so much beauty to that.
Okay, so I know I keep going granular, but I love this 3-step process because I love a framework that helps you locate yourself inside of something that takes a long time. I haven't even started the emulation phase because I haven't done the research. I've admired, I've longed for, I've felt the gap.
Well, that's step 0.
Right. But I haven't done the research, like for real. How do you know, or do you know, when you get to that part when you stop looking at that North Star and realize that you've become it?
No, because you'll never become it.
Really?
I'm never going to be Sarah, and I'm never going to be Brandy, and you're never going to be The Rock.
No, but don't you become your own North Star when you start innovating?
Yeah. I think that, well, what I'm going to say, which I think you need to include in the podcast, and which is why I'm going to debunk the statement you just said, is that this process never ends. It's not a close the gap. It's a circle. It's not a, okay, circle's done, check, we're good, we're off. No. The second you get to innovate, I wrote a song 2 weeks ago. I found a new artist I'm falling in love with. Process starts again. You create that business that The Rock starts, boom, you see a tequila company that you want that has nothing to do with The Rock. It starts again. Not to mention, within each step, this is kind of going to get confusing, but within each step, the process is happening within each step. Within emulation, it's going emulation, assimilation, innovation. You're innovating in the emulation step. You're emulating in the assimilate. Like, it's all happen. It's a circle inside of a circle inside of a circle inside of a circle, over and over and over and over and over, which to me means that you've always been the North Star. You always will be the North Star. And it's just a trusting in the fact that you're just expanding. It's not getting somewhere. It's just like, do you know what I mean?
I totally
don't
know what you
think
mean.
about it as like,
I think about Brandy and Sarah Bareilles as a directional signal, not a destination.
the process that I just went through, emulation, assimilation, innovation, in my senior project. If Brandy and Sarah are over here, I'm expanding this way, but then boom, there's something over there that I want, then I'm expanding this way. Boom, there's something over there that I want, I'm expanding it. Oh, there's something down here, I'm going this way. Oh, there's something that way, I'm going that way. Like, it's just a constant expansion of yourself. And I don't think that if it helps you to think about it in a 1, 2, 3, so be it. But I think the beauty of this process is that it's not about the destination that you get to, because you're never going to arrive where you want to be. Why do you think, this is something that my professors always tell me, but people like Bill Gates, people like all of the Motown artists that created some of the greatest records in the world, they're still making music. Some of the greatest scientists in the world are still trying to figure out different hypotheses that they come up with every day. Why do you think they're still doing that? They haven't arrived yet. There's always more to create. There's always more to get to. There's always more that you're going to want to be. And if they thought they'd figured it out, they would have stopped. There would be no more music in the generations above you.
It's not about figuring out. It's about the creative process itself.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what this is. It's not about becoming the North Star. It's about...
You are the North Star.
Yes, it's about just figuring out what you want to figure out in the world. And it's about figuring out what that even means. Yes, I'm my own North Star, but who am I? That's what this is about. Not to get all...
No, I love
woo
getting all
and
woo-woo.
higher power.
I love
but
that.
Who am I? That's what we're kind of here to figure out. And that's just what everyone else is trying to figure out.
Well, and here's why I love tying the process of changing your life to the creative process. Because you start to feel lost and disconnected and stuck in life and purposeless when you stop creating.
Mm-hmm.
And when you stop growing. And it's through the creative process of having something that you are drawn toward that you can help yourself grow and you can keep yourself creating new things. And I would say that the reason why the Motown artists continue to create music, and the reason why researchers continue to research, and the reason why people that have won Pulitzer Prizes continue to do what they do, is because it's not about the song or the prize. It's about the process itself that brings so much into your life.
It's about the expansion.
Yes. Yes. And I've noticed that about you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm about to get really...
Don't get emotional.
Oh, I'm about to get emotional because you used to be, and some days still are, but you used to be the most tightly wound, gripped, it's got to be right. I'm scared. Like, it's got to be right. It's got to be right. It's got resisting this process. And you know how you can see in somebody that you're very close to what their gifts are? Like, I can see that Amy can just open up the portal and tap into this higher power in just an extraordinary, magical way.
Mm-hmm.
And I could say that about Jessie, who is one of the kindest, most thoughtful, like the biggest heart I've ever seen in a human being. For you, I've known since you were born that you're an artist. And it's painful to watch somebody resist their own expansion. And what I witnessed that day watching you deliver this senior project is I watched you like really own it. And I personally believe that it was the framework that he revealed that's been the framework for your last 4 years, the underpinnings of the program itself and the process that you went through. And it's no surprise to me that days before you're giving this presentation, he's like, well, what you're describing is these 3 pillars that the whole thing is. And then you could put it all together, that framework in so many ways liberates you from gripping because you can always locate yourself in it.
And I also think, thank you for saying all that. And I appreciate you seeing my progress and seeing me. But I also think I can speak from my own personal experience, but the expansion that I've experienced over the past 4 years, I thought and wanted to look a very different way. For example, when I got to USC, I was just a singer. And when I left, I expected to have an EP and 25 original songs and maybe to even have played a bunch of shows and to maybe be going on tour. Who knows? Dreaming big. That's what I wanted my expansion to be. But through this process and through surrendering to this process and trusting in this process, I've experienced expansion in ways I never knew that I would, and in ways that I'm so grateful for and would not trade 25 songs for in a heartbeat. And I think, yes, this process works. Yes, you can use this process, but you've got to trust that even if the rock is your North Star, if it pulls you in a completely different direction, you've just got to trust that if you stay in the process and you stay present and you stay grateful and you stay conscious of it, it's going to lead you to where you need to go. Because I've learned so much about myself and about my artistry and about my humanity through this process that I never even knew was possible. And I still don't have 25 songs, and I'm still not going on tour, and I still haven't played that many shows. And I'm sure those are coming for me, but I would not trade those for the knowledge that I have about me and where I'm at and where I'm going for the frickin' world.
What's the most surprising thing you learned about yourself through this 3-part process?
My hydrating eye patches are dry, which means it's time for them to come off. I would say that my biggest takeaway after being at USC for 4 years and from doing my senior project is understanding that my gift is not just my vocal cords, and it's not just my ability to sing. And yes, that is God-given, that is universe-given, and that is something that I'm so grateful for and have no idea why someone gave it to me. I'm so excited to use it and see where it takes me. But I've realized that my gift and my artistry is so much more complex and so much more dynamic than just these 2 little things in here. And that's true for every single person on this earth. I mean, my professors say this too, but you work on your artistry your whole life. You work on your career your whole life. You work on your family your whole life. But the art isn't that. The art is you. We are all works of art, and living this life and figuring out how to live and figuring out how to be more like your North Star, just like how to be you, or going through this process is just chiseling away at the sculpture that is just you. And I think USC has really helped me to actually see myself as that work of art, and to see that I'm just hopping on this ride of emulation, assimilation, and innovation, and I'm going to ride this shit till I'm in the ground, babe, and see where it freaking takes me.
Well, I'm going to hook my caboose to that train, because the moment that you said we are all works of art, and living this life and figuring out how to live and figuring out how to be more like your North Star, it's just like chiseling away at the sculpture that is you. That is so beautiful, Ken.
You are the artwork. You
Yes.
can create it. You can paint your own life.
Yes. Your excuses are bullshit. That's right. All those excuses you got, they're just fear. They are just fear. When you learn the lesson, when you turn toward the friction in your life and you look for either the process or the people or the place that you're living or the place that you work, all of the things, the thinking patterns that you have, the behavior patterns, when you start to identify everybody, all of the areas of friction in your life, and you go to work to learn the lesson, here's what I want you to know. You are capable of changing it. You are 100% capable of learning the lesson and making anything in your life better. I know that is true about you. And that means that the only thing that is keeping you from identifying the things that aren't working and doing the work to move your life into alignment with who you're meant to be and the things that truly make you come alive, the only thing that's preventing you from doing that is you and your fears. Whether you're like any excuse that you have is just fear. You're afraid to try. You're afraid to fail. You're afraid you're too late. You're afraid of this. You're afraid of that. Now's not the right time. I don't have this. I don't have that. This person would be upset with me. All of it is fear. Fear of rejection, fear of it not working out, fear of being disappointed, fear of disappointing others. That's what an excuse is. You're just managing fear. And it's all baloney. And I say that because I do the same thing. I want to take you back just over a year ago. This was shocking when I started to prepare for this conversation with you, because when I went back through my camera roll and I looked at my calendar, I realized that it was just over a year ago that I published my last book, The High Five Habit. I spent 20% of that book sharing about this big dream that I had about launching a podcast. So over a year ago today, I did not have a podcast. I was still making excuses about a podcast. I was scared about launching a podcast. In fact, I wrote about it in this book. Just over a year ago, as I was promoting this book, I was making videos begging some of the biggest podcast hosts in the world to have me on their podcast to talk about my book, The High Five Habit. So I made videos literally for the biggest, the people that I admire. These custom videos. I put myself out there. I was all afraid, about doing it. I sent these videos off to people that I love. I sent them off. Crickets. Nobody even responded. And I took that to mean I will never make it in the podcast business. Because the people I admire the most in that, they don't even want to talk to me. They don't even respond. I mean, that's how big my excuses were. And I'm going to read to you a little bit about what I wrote. And this is just over a year old, you guys. So I want to put this in perspective as you're listening to me. As you listen to me right now, we are one of the top podcasts in the entire world because of you. We are the number one education podcast in the world on every platform because of you. A year ago, I was questioning whether or not I should even start this at all. And I'm going to read to you what I believed and felt in my heart. And I'm going to do this because there is something that you want to do. I had been thinking about launching a podcast for years. I had come up with so many excuses, so many reasons not to do it. There is something that is on your heart, that is on your mind. Some change that you want to make, some art that you want to pursue, something that you want to do with your life. You know it. You feel it. You think about it. That was me with this podcast. And a year ago, I was busy talking myself out of it. I was busy looking for all kinds of reasons and excuses for why it was too late, everybody. I missed the window. I should have done it years ago. See, don't even bother. When I think about the excuses that I had, they're the same excuses you had. And see, you're seeing me now. You're seeing the success. So you're sitting there going, well, it's easy for Mel Robbins. She already had an audiobook. Are you kidding me? I had the same excuse. I almost didn't do this. What a shame that would have been. And there's something that you're busy convincing yourself not to do. And that's why lesson number 2 is that excuse is bullshit. It's just fear. I had the same thing. Let me read to you from the High Five Habit, because this is what I put out in the world just over a year ago. You're seeing now what happens when you push through that stupid excuse. But I want you to understand, I get this. It's on page 111. Oh, yeah, I love this. Here's the title. I'm not giving this advice to you. I'm giving it to myself. So this is a chapter about jealousy, and it's about excuses and how I used to let self-doubt and jealousy eat me up inside. But here's the thing about jealousy. It's just blocked desire. It's a normal emotion. And the truth is, there's not a day that goes by when I don't feel a pang of jealousy. It happens every time I scroll through social media. And here's an example that I write about in this book. Because remember, when I published the High Five Habit just over a year ago, I didn't have a podcast. I didn't have a plan for launching a podcast. I was just writing about how jealousy was stopping me from pursuing it. It was eating me alive. So let me tell you about that jealousy I was feeling just a year ago. Right now, in my career, when I look ahead of me, the people I'm most jealous of are the ones who have already started podcasts. For example, my friend Lewis Howes. He's been hosting the School of Greatness podcast for 7 years. I'm extremely jealous of my friend Lewis. In fact, I got a bunch of friends who have hit podcasts, and I'm jealous of all of them. Too many friends to list. I never really thought about it before, but I'm surrounded by people who are podcast hosts. I'm jealous of them. And then, tell me if you do this too, I beat myself up for not having done it yet. I beat myself up and I come up with excuses all the time. Creating a podcast would be as natural and as fluid for me as drinking a glass of water. Why? Because I do audiobooks. I speak on stages. I don't like to write books because of my dyslexia and my ADHD. But why haven't I done it? If I want to do a podcast so much, why haven't I done it? And now I'm going to ask you the question. If you want to do this thing, whatever it is, travel the world, get healthy, write a book, change your career, go back to school, save your marriage, work on your if you want to do this, why haven't you done it? I'll tell you why you haven't done it. The same reason why I haven't done it. Because you tell yourself you've missed the window. You tell yourself that it's never going to be you. You want this thing so badly. Just admit it. I wanted so badly to be a podcast host. I did. But you know what I spent my energy doing? Listening to my fears, coming up with excuses. I'm too late. Somebody else already did it. I can't do it now. I'll just be a copycat. Nobody needs to hear my voice. There's already there's 5 million podcasts on Spotify. 5 million. I missed the window, everybody. And see, the truth is, when you start to write it out, all your excuses, you'll realize something I realized, which is it doesn't make any sense because there's nothing stopping you from doing it except for these stupid excuses. Nothing at all. Who cares that there's all these people that have already done? Who cares that your friend already renovated their kitchen and they have white cabinets and you wanted white cabinets and now you can't have white cabinets because then you're going to be a copy? Are you kidding me with these excuses? You can't go back to the gym because you haven't been in one in 3 months? Seriously? Do you know how dumb that is? You can't figure out how to be financially free? Do you know how many people who are stupider than you have figured that out? Of course you can figure that out. Your excuses are baloney. They're BS. It's just your fear. Just like my fear about being too late, not being good enough. You want to know the real deepest fear? The deepest fear is that I would finally pursue this thing that I'd always wanted to do. Because I've been thinking about this for a long time. You may not know this about me, but I got my start in local radio. I used to host a little call-in show Saturday mornings in Boston. I got paid $25 an hour to do. I loved that show. I fell in love with radio doing that show. I took on that job to help pay for groceries. It was a lifeline during a really hard time in my life. I loved it. And ever since then, 2007, I've wanted to get back to radio. And as the podcast market exploded, I wanted to get into podcasting. And you know what I did? I spent years coming up with excuses. Excuses for why I was too late. Excuses for why. And you're doing the same thing. Do you know how many times, everybody, I would say, it's too late. Mel, you missed the window. Everybody and their mother has a podcast. There's no way you're going to be successful. There's too many realtors, everybody. There's already enough nurses. How many of you have said that? Of course you have. There's enough books. Nobody's going to read my baloney. It's too late. I'm too old. Oh, I'm too young. I'm too young. I was talking with our son, Oakley. He loves streaming. Loves it. Loves playing video games and talking to the people that are watching him playing video games. Loves giving advice as loves doing it. And then we moved to a new school, and he was really afraid because when the kids said, "What are you into?" He's like, "Well, I love to stream." And they're like, "What?" Boom. Stop doing it. Was afraid of what people thought. Again, excuses. If I continue doing this, I won't have friends. That's bull cocky, whatever the heck the word is. I'm trying to, is that even a word? I don't even know. Who knows? But he hasn't done it for 2 years. And all of a sudden, because he has felt the pull, the last 2 nights, and you know what I think it is? I think it's the fact that he was on an episode of this podcast and there was so much positive feedback about what he shared that something clicked. And he realized his excuses are baloney, just like yours. And for the last 2 nights, you know what he's been doing after he gets his homework done? Streaming, giving kids advice. Is anyone watching right now? Nope, not a soul. But he's going to keep going. It's going to take time. And he kind of matter of fact last night, came down for a glass of water in the kitchen. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm streaming." I'm like, "Well, right now?" He said, "Yeah." He's like, "Nobody's watching right now." And I'm like, "Oh." And he's like, "Well, Mom, it takes time. You got to show up consistently." That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to stop this time because I was on a roll last time and I let my excuses and my fear stop me. I haven't done it in 2 years. I've missed this so much and I'm not going to let it stop me again. I love that kid and I love you. And that's why I'm telling you, your excuses, complete bullshit. You're not too late. You're not too early. Today is the right day. And you're not starting over. You're starting with all of the experiences of your life. You're doing this at the exact right time. This is perfect. You're listening to me today because you are meant to not only learn the lesson and start addressing the friction, but to one by one knock those excuses out of the way. And you know how they do that? Action is the answer. Action is the answer. You can figure anything out. Absolutely anything. You can reverse engineer it. You can stalk people. You can figure out what they did. And one step at a time, one day at a time, you can start to align your life with the things that you truly want to do, things you enjoy doing, with people that you really like. And you can push through your excuses one by one with the actions that you take. That's how I did it. I finally got so sick of feeling miserable, so sick of the friction inside me, so sick of denying myself the frickin' dreams that I have had held in my heart locked away. I was so sick and tired of myself that I'm like, that's it. I'm doing it. I don't care if nobody invites me on their podcast. I don't care if this thing fails. I'm not doing this for other people. I'm doing this for myself. And that's what you need to do. You're not doing this for the success. You're not doing this for the money. You're not doing this to impress somebody else. The changes that you need to make, the alignment that you need to bring your life into, you're doing this for you because you deserve to be happy. You deserve to see your dreams come true. You know how happy Oakley is? Sitting alone in his closet upstairs, streaming on Twitch while nobody is watching him. You know how happy he is? He is so happy because he has stopped feeling that tension and friction of knowing deep in your soul that you are denying yourself an experience that you want. And he is so happy that he has pushed through his own excuses and fears and that he has aligned his actions every night with something he's wanted to do. He has kept a promise to himself. That is the coolest thing in the world. That's what this is about. Like, who cares if nobody listens to this? Who cares if it fails in the eyes of the charts or whatever? Because that's not why you're doing it in the first place. You're doing it because you want to move yourself from a life that feels hard and friction and full of resistance that you're putting in your own way. And you want to align your actions with the person you want to become. That's what this is about, everybody. And it took the hardest year of my life to get the easiest damn obvious lesson that there is. Mel, stop making your life hard. Stop putting energy into the crap that's not working. Stop making all this so personal. Everybody screws up. Everybody gets in toxic situations. This is not unique to you. Everybody has people steal crap from them or betray them. This is not you. You're not the only one. Stop tolerating this crap from yourself and just look in the mirror and figure out what you're going to address and get on with it, woman. Like, enough. And I don't recommend that you have the hardest year of your life to learn these lessons. That's why I'm sharing them with you. I don't recommend that you get so broken down by your own bullshit that you have a mental health breakdown. I don't recommend that. I want you to figure out what's not working in your life, what aspects you hate, what brings you friction, make the list, then get rid of your excuses by fixing this stuff. Absolutely everything in your life can be improved by you, period. And the only thing that's stopping you from doing it is your fear. And that fear is going to disappear the second you start taking action. One of the reasons why it's so important for you to get this on paper is because when you get this friction out of your head and out of your body, and you give yourself the gift of putting it on paper, and I invite you to do this with somebody. Get a friend and together get a piece of paper out. This is what I do with my friend Pete. He's literally like, we need to remove the friction from your life because you're tolerating too much friction, Mel. Get with a friend because the friend will be a truth teller, and you will be a truth teller for that friend of yours. And draw a line down the center of the page and write shit I hate on the left and write things I love on the right. And for me, the left-hand column was way longer than the right-hand column. And what I'm here to tell you is you don't have to tolerate that much distress, that much friction in your life. You and I, we're just used to friction. That's why we tolerate it. You and I are used to the toxic dynamic in our family. We're used to not going to the gym. We're used to feeling tired. We're used to feeling last on our list. That doesn't mean it has to stay that way. I am telling you, you have within you. If you can write that stuff down, you can figure out how to move yourself, inch yourself from the left-hand column, the shitty column, over to the right-hand column toward liking and loving aspects of your life. I am in your life because I want you and I to enjoy our lives. It doesn't mean it's always a party, but when you can identify areas of friction, things just feel off. They feel harder than they need to be. It's a struggle. That means there is a person, a process, a place, there is a pattern, there is something there that you got to go to work on. That's it. Getting rid of friction is your job. Identifying it is the first step. Removing the excuses that keep you from taking the actions to smooth it out or remove it or improve it, there's your options. That's it. Remove it, improve it, do something different. That's it. Even just writing it down will make you feel better. And when you sit down with a friend and do this, they're going to call you out. They're going to call you out about the things that you complain on. Don't forget to put your marriage on there. Don't forget to put the fact that your back hurts on there. You know, you're always griping about blah, 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 blah. That's going to help you. And that's what I did with Pete. I got my little book right here. Got my list. Boy, when I read my list, I'm like, whoa, there was a lot I was tolerating. And I have gone step by step, one by one. And I have addressed it. See, here's the thing. You may not be responsible for creating the friction, but you have a responsibility to remove it. And you deserve that. That does not mean your life is going to be perfect. That means you are going to feel empowered. And this is not one of these one and done exercises, because I now hunt for friction. If something feels off, like just yesterday, we were doing an episode for the podcast, and I was sitting in a director's chair behind a table, and I felt friction in my body. And I'm like, this feels hard. This feels weird. And then I noticed more friction. I don't want to ask the team to break the set down because we just put it up. And then I started to notice the excuses. I don't want people to be upset. I don't want to be a freak. I don't want to constantly change my mind. And then I'm like, you know what? I am committed to living in alignment. I'm committed to making things easier. I'm just done with this. And so I'm just going to say what's not working, and then we're going to address it, and then it'll be over, and life is easier. It's so much easier. Oh my God, you guys. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe, because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.